Hello everyone, this is Tyler Harry again. In the last video we discussed ways to find language aims in the textbook from your school, and today we're going to talk about how to create materials from the language aims in your textbook. As a quick review, we'll look at the title page of the chapter that we want to focus on. So for this, we're going to focus on Lesson 1, Everything is New. The first question I'm going to ask myself is, how is this relevant to the language that I need to teach? Again, on the title page, you see the language is, how are you doing? And I'm good. So again, we need to know exactly what kind of language we're dealing with. In this, we're talking about greetings and feelings, which is important to recognize when we start to build our actual lesson idea. Okay, after looking through the unit or the lesson in its entirety, I see that the title of the lesson has to do with the title of the reading section. And so I say to myself, this is not relevant to what I need to do in order to create my lesson plan or lesson idea. The next question I ask is, how is the title page relevant to my needs? Or in other words, can I use it when I present my actual lesson materials? Okay, after looking at the title page, I see conversations taking place between multiple students, and the word greet and greeting keeps on coming up. And so I can identify that this lesson wants me to focus on greetings, which is also which I've already also found in the actual language aims for the lesson or the unit that we're going to study. The next question we need to ask ourselves is, how much material do I need to create to fill up the time? Now, I teach middle school here in South Korea, and the classes are exactly 45 minutes long. And so I need to understand how much of the materials that I create need to be blended with other materials that I'm expected to teach. Now, we cannot proceed until we first talk to our co-teachers to figure out what they want us to teach. My school in particular wants me to teach from the textbook, and so and they want me to teach the listen and speak portions of the textbook. So I am basically responsible for 4 pages inside of each lesson. And through a conversation with my co-teacher, I found out that they expect me to teach 3 lessons before midterm. All right, in the same conversation, I had a conversation with my co-teacher stating that the midterm would actually be on the 1st and the 2nd of May, which means between now and then, I have precisely, how many weeks? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I have 8 weeks between now and then to teach 3 lessons. That means that two weeks need to be spent on one lesson and 3 weeks on the others. So I divide my time that way. Now, because it's the beginning of the semester and I'll be doing a introduction to myself, to my new students, and I'm going to a new school, I also have to think about how am I going to prioritize my time. So I've decided that I'm going to spend 2 weeks on lesson 1, 3 weeks on lesson 2, and 3 weeks on lesson 3. Now again, this is important because when I'm thinking about how much materials I need to create per lesson or per week, I need to budget my time according to where I want to spend my focus. All right, so when you're creating materials for your student body, there are many ways that you can fail as a teacher, even before you begin a class. And I've learned this through sad experience. And so the next part, I'm going to talk about 5 different ways or 5 questions you need to ask about your lesson before you even create it, or your lesson idea before it's even created. The first one is it overly repetitive? Meaning, is the lesson material the same type of language, the same form of study that you're actually looking at in the book? So is your material basically just a recopy of something that you found in the book? If it is, then you might as well come up with a different idea, or just simply use the actual teacher guide that comes with the books, which you can ask your co-teacher for. Personally, I don't like to use it because the co-teachers at the school often use those heavily and rely on them heavily for their own reasons. So I like to create my own materials, which makes it easier for me and easier for them. So then we're not doing the same thing unknowingly. The second question I ask myself is, does it add and expand the language available in the text in an interesting and culturally relevant way? Meaning, will the students like it, or will the students even care about the language or what I'm presenting to them? Can they use it in their life? Can they apply the things that they're doing every day to it? So one thing that the students like around here is well, many students all over the world, for that matter, are really into pop culture, and so you try to build that into your lesson in some way. Now, the third question I ask is the style of material or the activity that made in such a way that the students can have some sort of familiarity with it, meaning are they activities that the students have done or have participated in before? It's very important, because if you have to spend too much time explaining how an activity works or how a material works, you'll lose a lot of interest from your student population, and it can snowball from there. It can just turn really bad really fast. Okay, the next question that I ask myself is also linked to number 3. Is it overly complicated? Meaning, am I going to have to explain myself over and over and over again to the students in order for them to move from point A to point B to point C? I want to take away as much complications as I can, just so that the students can understand and interact with the materials and be able to get to the point that I want them to in the time that I have allotted to me. And then lastly, does it match the language aims or the language abilities, or is it slightly beyond the level of my current student population? You don't want to spend a bunch of time having to have students look up words because nobody in the classroom knows how to translate it, or the teacher, your co-teacher, which is often responsible for doing a lot of the translation work, is going to be overly busy running around trying to figure it out from student to student to student. You want to be able to rely on, at the very most, not always, but for the most part, student experts that'll be in the classroom that have a little more advanced vocabulary levels, maybe some students that study TOEFL at their local Hagwon. But not every class, you can't always guarantee that every classroom is going to be filled with those type of kids. So you don't want to push them too hard, because again, you're trying to keep them interested in what they're trying to do. Even if you've checked all the boxes and everything's interesting and everything is fun, after a while, if they can't understand what they're doing, or they're not going to understand why they're doing it, and it'll just become frustrating, and the students will begin to disengage. Alright, so as I stated earlier in the video, feelings are central to understanding what we're going to do throughout all of the listen speak portions of all of lesson 1, and so that's where I want to focus the beginning of my lesson, because the lesson materials, because I'm trying to build a repertoire that the students can continue to go back to in order to understand what I'm going to do throughout the unit. So the first thing for me, and I wouldn't always suggest this, is we'll do a PPT that basically introduces some vocabulary, does a quick quiz, and then more quizzing. Then, as I stated, I'm going to tie it to some sort of cultural background, or make it relative to their lives. So if you're unaware, cacao talk is a really big thing here in South Korea, and these cacao emoticons are pretty fun. I've used this type of lesson in the past before with relative success, so that I know that it's successful and easy for the same type of student population. So again, I'm introducing a concept about feelings, and we can continue to look at these individually and the type of emotion that is attached to these images. The next thing I would have the students do is look at this particular material, and as you can see, it says translate into English. Now if we do direct translation, it doesn't always work out, so it's important that I have the students understand exactly what it is that I want from them. So I don't tell them to do direct translation. I would tell them to, again, translate it to the word that is most commonly associated, the emotion that's most commonly associated with the actual image. And all of this is so we can get to the final activity after I've gone through the book and gone through the PPT and had them go through that, where they would actually create their own emoticons according to these different emotions that that they want. And again, this all ties back to things that they might be interested in. Now, you can't get as a side, you can't get overly upset if students that aren't good at drawing don't want to spend a bunch of time drawing. And so you need to keep in mind that there might be students that just do quick stick figures and then disengage. And so you might have to come up with various activities and ideas that you want to do with that particular student population. Okay, last, you can do it however you like. It's your world, but for me personally, I like to create a portfolio for each of the schools that I teach at. This school is particularly called Yongsong Middle School. And as I said, it's new to me, so I'm only teaching first and second grade at this school, and so I would create folders for each group of students that I teach, and then expand it out from there. So this is lesson 1, and I'm focusing on feelings, and so I'm going to want to save all of the materials here, so it's easy to access. Again, this is the way that I like to file my ideas and my concepts and the work that I create. And I like to label it like this, because in case I have to use it at a different location or somewhere else in the future, I just can type in the actual language aim, and then it's not like lesson 1 or lesson 2 or anything like that. I hope my explanation of the process that I go through didn't seem oversimplified. One thing to keep in mind is that I've been doing this for over 6 years now, and then I was trained to do this as well in both my undergraduate and my graduate studies. And so a lot of this is going to come a lot easier to me. Something that I'll cover in the future, I'm not sure when, but in the future, is how to adapt materials from fan materials online, which is something some of you may be more interested in than actually starting from scratch and creating your own materials. If you disagree with anything that I have to say here, or you have anything to add, you can comment. I'm okay. I'm open to criticism, and sorry for the shoddy work as far as the videography goes. I'll never produce a lovely video. It'll always be skewed, but hopefully the information is sound. Thanks. Take care.